What's up, guys? It's Sang here with the Game Gurus. Doing a little bit different type of gameplay video today. Some of you guys immediately are recognizing the game I'm playing right now. If you don't, this is the hyped up, highly anticipated relaunch of classic WoW. WoW, if you're not familiar with it, is of course World of Warcraft. It's a game that first launched 15 years ago. That used to be, the most popular MMO pretty much of all time. I guess technically it still is probably the most popular MMO of all time. It's a game that a lot of us here in the Game Gurus have kind of a history with. In fact, most of us kind of met through World of Warcraft. And it's a game that for a long time now, people have kind of been wondering, what's the WoW killer going to be? And it seems like every year for the last 15 years, the WoW killer has been coming out in the form of some new MMO or other type of game. But WoW is so popular that now, 15 years later, they can release WoW Classic, which is literally a remake of Vanilla WoW. It's not a one-to-one exact remake, but it's a pretty close, pretty faithful remake of Vanilla WoW with all its inconveniences and what some people would label as charming, other people might label as frustrating game design. And so today, while I'm in the starting zone, the nostalgic horde starting zone, I'm going to attempt to answer the question: should you, as somebody who played Vanilla WoW 15 years ago, should you come back and play classic World of Warcraft? Now, you might be wondering, who am I that you should care about my opinion? And the fact is, I'm a nobody. And by that, I mean I'm like any other person who played WoW 15 years ago. When I was in high school, I played Vanilla for the first time, fell in love with the game, have played in some capacity since then, pretty much every expansion. And by that, I mean I'm basically one of millions of you out there who, had an experience with Vanilla WoW that was very enjoyable, had a great time, have played a lot. I'm obviously much older now. I'm not unique. I'm not a big streamer. There's not anything particularly special about me that should cause you to care about my opinion. But nonetheless, I feel like I am like a lot of you. And so who knows, maybe that's the kind of opinion that would be beneficial to some of you guys. And so that's why I'm making this video. So I'm just going to touch on a few things while I'm just killing some boars in the starting area that I think will help answer the question of should you come back to classic WoW as somebody who played in Vanilla. And I will say with the caveat, this is not my only character in this game. I have a level 60 warrior. I actually just got through with an MC raid tonight, so I am a little bit of a no-lifer with this game. But I mean, I feel like having finished that 1 to 60 leveling experience, I've done a lot of dungeons, I've done a raid now, I can kind of speak to this subject at least a little bit. We have a long way to go, but I can speak to it a little bit, and hopefully maybe answer your guys' question. So the first thing I want to talk about while I'm kind of running around here that most people think of when they think of classic WoW or vanilla WoW is the community. That's one thing that people have said over and over again when it comes to retail and Dungeon Finder and LFR and everything's cross-server, cross-faction, this, that, and the other. And they feel like that one thing WoW lost over the years is its sense of community, of real player identity, knowing the people on your server and having a reputation and starting to build kind of real friendships in game with people on your server and in your guild and that you run into while you're leveling. The kind of age-old story of bumping into some other player when you're level 10, and then the next thing you know, you bump into him again and you're level 20, but this time you group up. You bump into him again at level 30, but you're in a dungeon. Next thing you know, you're in the same guild. You hit 60 together, you raid together, you go through the entire expansion together, and you've made a real friend, a real relationship with somebody just who happened to be on your server. And a lot of that really just doesn't happen anymore in retail. And so that's the one thing people have been talking about over and over again leading up to Classic's release is We want that sense of community. We want that sense of connection with players on our server, people that we run into, people that we see, and we want to have a reputation ourselves. If you're a tank, you want to have a reputation for being the best tank on your server. Maybe you want to be known as the guy who can do every enchant. What it really comes down to is real relationships in game, and who you are as a person and as a player, giving you a chance to form an identity on your server. And I will say 100% that there is more of a community aspect to Classic than there is to retail. So if that's one of the things you really wanted, that may be a real swing factor for you in coming back. But I will say that's kind of a double-edged sword, because as everybody knows, this is the internet. When I say that there's an opportunity here to have real relationships, and your personality can come through your character and you can make an impact on people, that can be in both a positive and a negative way. Like you can meet really cool people, really friendly people, but I feel like a lot of times people focus exclusively on that, and they ignore the fact that there's also a real opportunity to have some really negative experiences with people in Classic. And of course you can have your own blacklist that you can run, or you can put them on ignore, or whatever it is you do with that type of situation. Maybe you just kind of move on and think, I'll just make a mental note and not group with that person again. But it's important to say there is a real opportunity. Like I've run into some people while leveling and doing dungeons and different things that were just genuinely not very friendly people. And I will say that with the game being 15 years old now, and with people knowing all the mechanics, and they know how to min-max every character, and they really know how to play out Classic to what I would say kind of a character's utmost potential, I will say there is a slightly more hardcore feel to the community where, for example, if you're looking for a dungeon to level right now, like let's say you want to run SM, most of the groups that you see doing that are groups of mages with a warlock, with a priest, or you have these melee cleave comps that are like a priest, warriors, and a shaman for Wind Fury. I honestly can say that in my entire leveling experience, I ran with the druid one time. And I've heard from people that play some of these other classes like hunters or druids or rogues, they have a hard time finding a dungeon group because they don't fit into the meta of most efficient leveling. So definitely 100%, I would say that there are elements of Classic WoW's community that have been maybe not necessarily damaged, but at minimum altered by the fact that this is an older game, and people are to some degree playing it differently. Now that may not be a negative for you. That might not be a thing that detracts you, but I feel like a lot of people have kind of approached this game naively and thought nothing was going to change between when they played it 15 years ago and now. But it has, and the community is definitely different. Had a lot of positive interactions, but there have definitely been some new kind of footholds that really negative interactions can take place in, for example, when it comes to the meta and things like that, as I said. Another thing that for me was a big factor, and I think for other people was a big factor in Classic WoW, is the pace that it has. The different kind of pace that vanilla has in relation to like retail. Retail sometimes kind of feels like you're on a treadmill and you're just running to keep up because you're farming Mythic Plus for gear, or World Quest for gear, or you're trying to get that Titan Forge, or you're trying to farm AP. There's all kinds of different things that retail keeps you active with. And the reason they do that is because they know that players typically will do however much content you provide them. And over the years, people have always asked for more content, more reasons to come back to the game on a daily basis. And so they've done that. They've done that in retail. And, once again, may not be a bad thing for you, but Classic certainly has a different pace to it. Case in point, the majority of the player base now, I believe we're 4 weeks past release, has not hit level 60. I mean, the majority of people by far are still leveling, and some people will not hit level 60 for another 3, 4, 6 months, because they are enjoying the leveling experience. The leveling experience of Classic WoW is a really, really big part of it. It's a big time investment. It'll take most people, on average, 12 to 15 days playtime to hit level 60. And that is just altogether different than jumping into, for example, a new expansion in retail. Also, acquiring gear, not having the chance for gear to Titan Forge, there's very definite best in slot combinations for your gear, and you don't have to worry about, okay, what if this Titan Forges, or what if this happens to roll a certain way. There's none of that. It's, you have your best in slot gear, you know where it comes from, either it drops and you get it or it doesn't, and as a result, there's some real times where Classic slows down quite a bit because you'll have everything that you need and there won't be anything else available, and the game really slows down. And I think for a lot of people, that's a big deal. I mean, Classic really is not just an MMO, it's an MMO RPG. And some of these elements, like, the gear, the pace, the leveling, character identity, all those things combine into what a lot of people would label as a more meaningful experience. Now, once again, on the flip side, there are a lot of people that I've seen over and over again on the Reddit or just talking to people in Discord that actually feel like they can't approach and play Classic WoW because of how big a time investment that it is to level and really just to get anything done, like to look for a dungeon and find a tank and find a healer. Sometimes that can take 20, 30, 40 minutes. I've seen people trying to form groups for an hour in Classic WoW, and people say, I really wanted to play, I gave it a shot, but I can't get home from work at 5:30, fix dinner, do something with my wife or my girlfriend or my significant other, get dinner, clean the house, all these things, and then I can't do that and spend an hour finding a dungeon group. That just doesn't work for me anymore in this new stage of life. And so one of the things that people would label as one of the biggest strengths of Classic is actually ruling out some people from being able to play. So once again, you kind of have this pro and con situation with the pace and the general kind of atmosphere and feel of Classic. Another thing that has always come up in the conversation around Classic WoW as whether people should come back or not is pure nostalgia, just experiencing that huge world again. For all of us that have played before, can it feel like it did the first time? Is there a way to find that level of mystery again and that sense of wonder? And all the different memories that we had, is there a way to replicate that? Or is this all just rose-colored glasses? Like, are we all just looking back and in reality we can't have something like that again? And I can confidently say that, once again, nostalgia is both kind of a pro and con here. It depends how you look at it. Like, it has absolutely been a blast seeing places and doing things again that, for me, were so iconic whenever I played Vanilla WoW for the first time. And even then, just like doing things and being like, wow, like I remembered this way, and it's not that way at all. It's completely different. That's really cool. And for me personally, I played as Alliance back in Vanilla, and this time around I'm playing Horde, obviously. And so I'm seeing things from a totally different perspective. The leveling experience was completely different for me. So I've kind of seen a new twist. I'm playing the same class I did in Vanilla, but I know a lot more, and so I'm able to play the game at a higher level, and that's been fun too. So it's not like the exact same experience, truly there are some elements of Classic WoW where the nostalgia is kind of playing out in a positive way, and I really am able to experience something uniquely or similar to the way I did 15 years ago in Classic. At the same time, there are plenty of things that I've experienced that were either charming or I thought maybe they would feel new again, and they really don't. There's only so many times that getting ganked by another player and or dying to a mob. Maybe you're on a PvE server and you die and you're like, okay, dang it, I died, I gotta go back. And you run back and the graveyard is literally a 20-minute run away from your body. There's only so many times that can be charming. And I know some people say, okay, that makes it feel impactful. I totally agree. I totally understand. But it's not always fun, and that's okay for it not to always be fun. There are some pieces of the game where the nostalgia either just feels different. Maybe I appreciated some things then that I really don't enjoy now. And 100%, I think some people would need to acknowledge that there are pieces of this game that will not feel the way they did 15 years ago. Just plain and simple, there are some things that will feel different. So that's okay, but if you really think that you can come back to Classic and experience it for the first time again, I would say, unfortunately, I don't think you can. I think you can do a lot of things that will make it feel unique, and I think you can have fun with it. And there are some pieces that do feel as good as they did the first time, but it's still not the same thing as experiencing it again. And so if the thing for you that's going to bring you back to Classic is you want it to feel as fresh and new as it did playing it for the first time, I don't think you can achieve that 100%. And then lastly, like really briefly, the last topic I'll talk about is the actual game itself, the mechanics, the design, the philosophy. I mean, a lot of people have lost faith in Blizzard over the years after trying out different expansions, and especially with BFA. And the question is, can we trust Blizzard to recreate the Classic experience? And I'll say that the game feels in most ways like vanilla. There are classes that their specs are just really not that good in certain situations. Like, I hate to say it, but Prot Paladin is still just really not a great spec to play in raids. I'm not saying it's impossible to do that, but Prot Paladin is not designed to function well in raids and to have the mana to be able to tank a boss and deal with the amount of damage you're going to be receiving. It's great in dungeons, but struggles in raids. Enhancement Shaman are not going to be top damage on the meters. And I'm not saying that's the only important thing. There are things that Enhancement Shaman can do, but they didn't do class balancing. The game is very much so as it was in the 1.12 patch. It feels like Classic. Leveling, all these things feel like Classic. They've done a really good job of trying to make this as faithful a recreation as possible, and I'm not going to dive into the issues with layering and things like that, those kind of temporary things, but I believe they really have done their best to make this an authentic experience, and the game itself feels like Classic, with slightly updated visuals if you turn your graphics up, but in most ways the game feels like it did back then. It's very different from retail. The classes are different. The questing is different. Having a talent tree is different. But at the same time, there are a lot of pieces that are very different from how they were in vanilla. The add-ons that are available, what they're capable of. Going into a dungeon and just having that baseline level of knowledge of how the dungeon works or how the boss works. Case in point, Ragnaros in vanilla, people were on Ragnaros for an absurd amount of time before they finally got the first kill. And in Classic, Ragnaros was killed by the world first guild on day 4 of release. Not even the entire raid was level 60, and a lot of them were wearing greens. While they've done their best to make it a recreation, once again, this is completely different than playing the game for the first time. People are typically better at the game. There's a baseline level of knowledge that previously didn't exist. Even if people haven't played WoW, most people that are gamers that would play this type of game have played an MMO now, and they have a baseline knowledge of MMOs that didn't exist before. And so the game, while I believe was truly attempt to be a faithful recreation, is always going to be different because it's a remake and it's not the thing for the first time. And in some ways, once again, that can be fun, and in other ways, the raid just doesn't feel as hard as it did. And in some ways it's not. Once again, I'm not going to dive into those details, but killing Rag felt like a huge accomplishment. Killing each boss in MC felt like a huge accomplishment in vanilla, and it was. It doesn't feel as big a deal now as it did then. Hitting certain levels doesn't always feel like as big a deal as it did then because it's happened before. And maybe in some ways it's just easier because we know more about the game. But it is fun. As somebody who loved vanilla, I'm enjoying Classic, and I think I'll continue to enjoy Classic, but I have to acknowledge it's just not the same game. It's not the same game, even if it's only because we've changed and the game maybe hasn't really changed that much. But we're different people. So all that in mind, kind of all that rambling in mind, should you come back to Classic, maybe you love vanilla, you just kind of had that itch, you're like, should I go back? Is it worth it? I would say yes and no. And maybe that's not a great answer, but if you are willing to accept that it's not going to be exactly the way it was in vanilla, it's not going to be exactly the way it was 15 years ago when you were in a completely different stage of life, but you want to taste and experience kind of that real MMO RPG, different pace, community-based type, game, absolutely, you should come back. If you're willing to accept some of the inconveniences of Classic WoW, the different challenges that it brings, if you're willing to accept that the community is going to be different in some ways, and you genuinely love and enjoy Classic and you just want to experience it again, maybe at as your primary game, maybe it's just a side game that you take your time with, absolutely, you should come back. Leveling, doing these dungeons, doing these raids, I've loved it, and I look forward to continuing to play Classic. And it's as accessible as it ever was, and it's 100% worth checking out if you would just love to step back into the world again and experience it with the understanding that it's not going to be the exact same, it's not going to feel the exact same, and that's okay. If for you Classic is something that you think you would only enjoy if in every way it's identical to what it was back then, in terms of the challenge, the community, that nostalgia. Like if for you it's like, okay, I only want to play Classic if it feels exactly the way it did I played it the first time, honestly I think you'd be better off not playing. I think you'd be better off just remembering that first powerful experience that you had, keep those kind of positive vibes, that positive impression, and sometimes it's not worth going back and doing something again because it just doesn't live up to what you remember. Like you'd be better off just having those really good, really positive memories, and not trying to relive that same road in the same shoes that just don't fit anymore. I think there's, for some players, that they would come back and they might actually tarnish in some way their memory, or maybe they would start to question their own memory of vanilla and just be like, maybe this wasn't that great and I just didn't really understand what was going on, or maybe I just am forgetting all the negative things. If for you the only way you would enjoy Classic if it's the exact same in every way, you would be better off just leaving your memories where they are, and passing on this one, I really think. So I know that wasn't just a absolute 100% yes, you should do this, absolute 100% no, you shouldn't come back. There's kind of an answer for both groups there, but I think that's how Classic is. It hits people differently, and for some people it's worth that trip. For me, it's been worth that trip. I've had a really great experience so far. I'm looking forward to more, but for others, you'd be better off saying, you know what, I had a great time, I had great friends, I had great memories. Just because the game's coming out, it's not necessarily going to bring that exact thing back. So I think I'm just going to leave it where it was and continue to play Borderlands 3 or something like that. Kind of two answers for two different groups of people. So anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts. If if you jump back into Classic WoW, let me know if you agree, if you disagree. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you're one of those people that's thinking about coming back and you're just not sure, and maybe you want to ask about something that I didn't really touch on, definitely leave me a comment. If you want to hop in Discord, we got a Game Gurus Discord. You can hop in. You can ask me directly. We got a few people playing Classic WoW. They can help talk about it as well. But that's really what I'd love to generate here as a discussion. So let me hear your thoughts. Come join the Discord. Check it out. Once again, I'm Sang on the Discord with the Game Gurus. Yeah, jumping back into Classic WoW, having a great time. And we'll definitely be hopefully doing some more content for Classic WoW moving forward. So once again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and get back to my leveling grind on my alt, and we'll see you guys next time. Take it easy.